Welcome to RSVP. I'm Karen Babcock. I'm your communications consultant with Niagara Region Public Health. I'm here in the Environmental Health Lab with Bjorn Christensen. He is our Director of Environmental Health. Welcome.
Hi, Karen. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having me in this wonderful lab that you have here. So I'm just wondering if you can actually tell us a little bit about some of the cool things that I'm looking at in the lab here and some of the things that environmental health does.
Great. I mean, this is the end of the season for our vector-borne program. But what you see in this room is a lot of the mosquito traps that we dispense throughout all our 12 municipalities to do surveillance for West Nile virus. And so they go out on a weekly basis, and the students collect the mosquitoes, and we bring them back, and they go out to a contractor who speciates them, and the ones that are capable of carrying West Nile virus, they get shipped off for further testing. And of course, we've had a number of positive mosquito pools this year that have tested positive for West Nile virus. And what you see behind me here is some of the microscopes that we use for tick identification, where we get ticks submitted from all across the region. There are some parts of the peninsula that are sort of endemic for areas for black-legged ticks that have the potential to spread Lyme's disease. So this is where we can identify whether they're dog ticks or black-legged ticks. And so our staff are very busy with that type of thing in the summer months.
That actually leads me into my next question. Sitting in the communications consultant role, I now see that a lot of media around public health surrounds environmental health issues. So I was wondering how you've seen things change in the way that information flows from the public and the media and environmental health staff.
Well, that's an interesting question. I mean, there certainly have been changes over the years. I always say that environmental health is kind of the acute care sector of public health. And certainly years ago, when I was maybe first in management and went to committee, the newspapers were different in those days. They were individually owned, and all the reporters would be at committee. And when we presented reports, that's where they would get their stories, and then they would run with those stories. And there may have been some community events where they would call us. It was even before they had roles like yours here. So. But in recent years, of course, in environmental health, we're accountable and we're very transparent. So we have websites that disclose basically everything we do, from food safety to beaches to personal service settings, tattoo parlors, you name it. We have disclosure sites for it. And we also have a conviction page on there, and certainly the media monitors that pretty closely. And they're interested in a lot of the work that we do. Certainly with Niagara being a peninsula, they're very interested in our water quality for the beaches, and they call us constantly. We're also proactive with the vector-borne diseases and the zoonotic diseases if it's rabies. If we have a case, we'll go public with that, and of course then they contact us for the story and weather alerts and all those sorts of things. So there's a lot of interest stories that the media have in the work, the frontline work that public health inspectors do.
I have another question around that rabies thing. So we have a fox family that's living in our neighborhood. We're right in town, and there's a lot of concerns from our neighbors about this fox and if it has rabies and why it lives with us. What kind of animals do we need to be concerned with when it comes to rabies?
Well, rabies, it's interesting because we really didn't have rabies in Niagara for many, many years, with the exception of bat rabies. But as we know, in the last year, we've had a resurgence of raccoon rabies. And of course, there is cross-species transmission of that virus. So foxes are definitely a potential, and we may have the same fox that goes into our respective yards, because apparently I just learned we live pretty close to each other. So of course, foxes and raccoons are wildlife, and you observe them from a distance. So the potential for them to get rabies is real. But it's wildlife is something that should be observed from afar, and if you have pets, of course, we certainly recommend, and actually there's a bylaw in Niagara that you need to vaccinate your pets for rabies. Observe wildlife from a distance.
I'll make sure I pass that along to my kids. If they're watching, girls, stop petting the fox. I'm going to change gears a little bit. I know Bjorn's really busy. We had to squeeze this interview in because he's preparing for the Sci-Fi Conference, which I have to cheat here. It's the Canadian Institute of Public Health Inspectors Ontario Conference. And it's being hosted in Niagara Falls just next week, actually. This video will probably come up after the fact. But do you want to walk us through some of the highlights for the conference?
Certainly. The Sci-Fi Conference stands for the Canadian Institute of Public Health Inspectors. And so that conference is an educational conference that moves around the province on an annual basis. And we have the pleasure of hosting it this year. And the last time we did it was 10 years ago. So we bring I think we're expecting over 200 public health inspectors from across Ontario. And this is where we, they'll be involved in hearing the latest science on across all areas of environmental health, from food safety to water issues to outbreak issues and so forth. So it should be a very, very exciting conference. We've had some amazing keynote speakers. Dr. Robin Williams and Doug Sider coming back to talk about sort of their involvement with public health inspectors. So it should be an exciting conference.
Right, so the theme of the Sci-Fi Conference is embracing the future. So my next question is around what you think public health, environmental health has on the horizon, what we need to be concerned about.
So we chose the conference theme, Embracing the Future, because the province of Ontario is in the process right now of health system transformation. It's really an exciting time in Ontario. So a little while ago, the Ontario government introduced the Patients First Act, which perhaps will make closer ties between MINS and medical officers of health. They're also engaged in a modernization process, so the Ontario Public Health Standards that all our work falls under is being modernized, as well as all the regulations that public health inspectors enforce are being updated and modernized. So that's the theme, Embracing the Future. And to address that issue at the conference, we're having a town hall meeting that I get the pleasure to moderate, and we're bringing in the Chief Medical Officer for Ontario, who's going to talk about the standards. Of course, they haven't been released yet, so it'll be more of a process type a debate, I'm sure, from his side. And we're having the manager of environmental issues for more policy programs from the ministry talk about the regulations. And then we're having our very own Dr. Yeager in her role as the president of the Association of Local Public Health Agencies, what Alpha does in helping to shape some public policy. And after that, I get to ask them some pointed questions, and then before I turn it over for the audience to ask some questions. So I think that's going to be a pretty exciting day at that town hall.
That's quite the lineup, so it ought to be a good panel for sure. All right, so my final question is more of a statement. As our viewers are probably aware, then Bjorn has announced his retirement after 43 years of service with Niagara Region Public Health in its previous state as well. So my final question is around lessons learned or any parting words that you'd like to share with all the staff.
I mean, I've had the pleasure of working for one organization for a long time, which I think is quite rare today. I mean, I've worked with some amazing people, past and present, within the department, across the corporation. I've had an opportunity to work provincially, nationally, and internationally on many different committees. So public health is a really, really exciting place to work. There's so many dedicated people that are here, and it's all about public service and protecting public safety is really what we're all about, regardless of what program area you're in. And certainly I have a passion for environmental health. That's where I've spent my whole professional career. But as a senior management member, I've learned so much about what everybody else does in public health. And I mean, we truly are a team to protect residents of Niagara.